is Alien 3 as bad as its reputation suggests? It followed two classics and left many fans in the cold. In this review, we'll discuss our experiences with the film, where it takes the character of Ripley, and the many differences between the theatrical cut and the 2003 assembly cut. Let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
And we have crash-landed on a prison planet because this, in honor of Alien Day 426, LV 426 to be precise, we are once again, for the third year in a row, doing a movie in the Alien franchise. Of course, third year means it's the third time, therefore it is Alien 3. Unless we're doing them out of order for some weird reason, but I would not let that happen. I'm too anal for that.
We did do Alien vs. Predator before this.
Because we're counting it as part of the Predator franchise instead, because there's more Alien movies. At least right now. That might change as time goes on, because Predator's maybe catching up soon. There's a fifth one coming soon. We're going to talk about Alien 3, the much maligned. Obviously, we had a blast talking about Alien and Aliens the last 2 years, because they are exceptional films. They are masterpieces of their kind. Aliens is my personal favourite movie of all time. It was nothing but praise. It was glowing, effusive praise. It was probably sickening. It was like eating too much chocolate and just feeling a little bit fat because it was just so much good stuff.
I didn't like listening to it.
Things have changed a little bit this time, though. Because Alien 3, a bit more divisive. And even that's maybe been a generous take on it. I'd say it's gotten a little more divisive over the years because I do think it's found a bit of a fan base. Some people do quite enjoy elements of Alien 3 and stick up for it. Certainly after the alternate cut, the assembly cut came out on the quadrilogy DVD, and that's now been kind of considered the main version of the film for the last, 20 years next year now. Jeez, time has flown. You know, attitudes have changed a little bit, but there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to get into. There's a lot of reasons why this was very much hated when it came out, and a lot of reasons why a lot of Alien and Aliens fans aren't that fond of Alien 3. We're going to get into all that. We'll start spoiler free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers. So, yes. The premise of Alien 3, if you do not know, is that the ship, the Sulaco from the end of Aliens, has some problems during the opening titles, and it crashes on a planet which has nothing but a prison colony. It's like a working prison colony. And Ripley is the sole survivor. Both Newt and Hicks are dead. They're just dead at the start of the movie. They're already gone. And Ripley has to deal with the fact that she's the only woman here. It's a men's prison. And of course there's an alien running around eventually. And what changes up things a little bit from the previous films, it's a lot more like Alien 1 in the sense that there's only one alien and they're fairly limited. It's not colonial marines where they've got like an arsenal of firepower. But even more so in the first film, they are very limited in that they don't even have a single weapon because this is a prison and there's no firearms of any kind. They don't have, they have like a couple of knives maybe, and maybe an axe that's like a tool to use as a weapon, which against a xenomorph is a little, it's coming up a bit short.
You don't want melee against the xenomorph.
No. The acid blood kind of, spoils your day a little bit. Gets in the way. It's the bad times. So that is the basic gist of Alien 3. So obviously I'd seen this before. I've seen the assembly cut a few times. We both watched the assembly cut for this review. What's interesting is that Tara had not seen this version of the film before.
That's not true.
Oh, it's not? I thought it was.
I have seen it before.
But you did tell me you hadn't, right? I'm not making that up.
Well, I told you that I didn't own the quadrilogy, but I did borrow it from a friend a few years ago and watched all four of them.
I have been greatly misled. This is...
So I have seen this cut before, yeah. And,
this is
not too long ago.
This is a sickening betrayal, quite frankly.
But if you wanted to purchase the films digitally, for some reason, the assembly cut isn't what you get anymore.
You get it in the extras on iTunes if you buy it through Apple. You get the choice. Yeah, you get the choice of which cut. I think the other providers don't offer that, so you just get the theatrical cut, bizarrely. Which is strange in this case in particular, because there is quite a big difference, and we'll talk about the differences when we get into the spoilers and nitty gritty of it, but there's an entire middle chunk of the film that wasn't in the theatrical cut. There's alternate versions of things, there's alternate, like, the alien comes from an animal, and depending on which cut of the film you watch, it's a different animal. There's so many little things as well sprinkled throughout, and then there's a big thing at the end. There's a lot of things throughout. There's a lot of differences between the cuts. And I will say that without a doubt the assembly cut is the better film of the two, because it makes sense. There's, like, chopped up parts that are still in the theatrical cut that don't really make sense until you see the assembly cut and understand the context for why these 2 or 3 things happen. So there's things like that going through it. But okay. Well, okay, I will add a big intro about how, this is the first time you've seen the other cut, and that should be a shocking experience for you, and that could be like a whole angle of which to take to start off this review, and it is as dead as new is. So I'll just ask the question, Tara, how do you feel about Alien 3?
I actually like Alien 3. I don't think I've ever been somebody who hated it. Like, I understand because of your feelings for aliens, why you would hate it. I do think it has a very unique look. It has a pretty cool, like, prison planet look and, like, world that they've established that still fits in the Alien from more Ridley Scott's Alien. And, some pretty great acting in it, some heavy hitters in there. I like the movie. I do find that the assembly cut is very long. Like, that middle chunk is good, but some of the pacing, especially in the second half of the movie, just really slows down quite a bit, to the point where I'm just like, can we just get on and not have any problems anymore? Not having a new thing that they have to fix. But anyway, I do like the movie. I don't think it's bad. I never really thought it was bad to begin with.
I appreciate a lot of things about it. Like, I think visually, like you said, it's got a look. It is very cinematic, and I kind of like this weird tone that it's going for. Now, admittedly, is it the tone that I wanted in an Alien movie after Aliens? I'm not so sure. It's kind of a weird pivot. Even ignoring for now the characters that are just sort of killed at the start and things like that, but just in the sense of, after Aliens, like, is this what you expected of an Alien 3? Is for them to go back smaller again and more focused? And I'm not saying that's a bad choice necessarily. I'd argue that maybe you should have just done it with someone other than Ripley, and just so you don't have to ruin the ending of Aliens. You can just have this setting, have these types of characters, and just sort of go from there. But there are scenes in the movie I like. There's definitely stuff. I do think there's a lot of objective problems as well, and it's not all just because of the shift from Aliens. Some of it is quite valid. There was a lot of very similar looking bald white men with very similar accents, and it's not necessarily always easy to keep track of which one you're looking at any given time.
Which one Pete Postlethwaite is, though.
Sure, yeah. But I know his face already, though. That's the thing. I recognize him. And he's always bald, whereas a lot of these other guys are shaved just for the movie. So...
Yeah, I mean, they all have pretty unique personalities for the most part, though. Like, you definitely spend a lot of time with each one of them, which is helpful. The thing that I think is, very notable is that the alien looks bad most of the time. It looks like it's got the wrong coloring, like it's too yellow, and sometimes it's too blue, and like the CGI xenomorph looks bad, except when it's just a guy in a costume.
Well, it's 1992.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the answer to that right there, is that it's 1992 CGI. Although I said I'm not sure, because some of the shots I don't know if they're in the theatrical cut, which makes me wonder, when they did this cut in 2003, did they like have to do a little bit of the CG work then for some of the extra shots?
Did they make it look like it was 1982?
They didn't make it match. Yeah, they didn't go too far, just so that it would fit with everything else. Yeah. Now, what I was going to say about the characters is that I actually do have a hard time, not so much when they're talking and stuff, but when there's stuff going down towards the end and there's a lot of them running through tunnels and things like that and they're just yelling what's happening. Like, I just kind of get, like, I don't know which one's which for the most part as things are happening. And I agree the pacing, and like I do feel the length a bit towards the end. I think the final kind of like section with the alien towards the end of the movie is kind of one too many, but I do think the one that's added in for the assembly cut is actually one of the most interesting parts of the movie. So I think totally. It's better with that in it, but it does. I think that last chunk is kind of murky and just like a hodgepodge of people running through corridors, like. Because one of the things I like about that middle section that's added in the assembly cut is that the characters have to come up with a plan, and they have to come up with a plan to deal with the alien when they have no tools or weapons that they can really use.
Actually, yeah, I love that because it's a prison colony, they don't have weapons, they don't have guns, even though it's maximum security. By maximum security, they're on a planet that's isolated from other humans they can harm. Yeah.
But because of that, the plan is kind of simple, and you can understand what they're trying to do at all times. There's a clear goal in mind, and we'll get into what all those things are in spoilers. I think the plan later on in the film, where the sort of the final plan, if you will, is a lot more convoluted, and I never quite really understood what each character's role in the plan necessarily was. There's just a lot of running in and out of corridors and ultimately, I mean, I know what the end goal of the plan is. I understood what the final point of the plan was, but ultimately, a lot of the build up to it, and then because there's a moment in the middle of it where things are going wrong, it's like, oh, we have to improvise, and I'm like, that doesn't make a difference to me because I didn't really follow what you were doing before anyway.
So yeah, I understand what you mean.
And I think part of it is just the plan's a bit not clearly defined for us. And also, I think part of it is that it's a lot of very similar looking bald dudes running around in the dark. So it's hard to keep track of who's who.
I like the setup of Ripley always being in danger. Like, even when she doesn't know there's a xenomorph around, because she happens to land on a colony that it's just male prisoners that are there to be separated from the rest of humanity because they're dangerous. She's now like the target of all of them and the big gossip, and the threat is still very real for her.
Do you know what I kind of like about that actually is that she doesn't actually give that much of a shit, and obviously there's some moments where she does get into danger, and the other characters that are sort of warning her and are concerned about the fact that she's there, they have legitimate reasons for being concerned. Like, she's surrounded by murderers and rapists who are all here for a reason, and they've not seen a woman in years, right? So there's a lot of reasons to be concerned. But I kind of like that after the experience of Alien and Aliens, like, her response to being told any of this early on in the film is just like, so effing, I'm Ellen effing Ripley.
Yeah, there's a great line where one of them threatens to like bash her brains in or something, and she's like, please, like, that, then I won't have to worry about anything anymore, just a quick death, it would be great.
Yeah, so I kind of like her attitude and response to all of that stuff. It was kind of a...
Yeah, plus there's a little bit of her trying to prove herself to them, much like in Aliens, where she has to, like, drive the big yellow thing. And, move the whatever it is to the other thing.
Oh,
I don't know.
The power loader. Okay.
The power loader, yeah. Bay 12, please.
Yes, Bay 12.
Thank you. I knew I could count on you. It took a little while, but...
I wasn't going to bother, but then you struggled with the second thing. I'm like, okay, like, just a little... I'll step in. You just gotta roll through it like nothing mattered. It's fine. Just gotta roll with it.
Yeah, so... But, in this movie, she still has to, like, sort of prove herself that she's not there just to be rescued. Like, she's actually capable and probably just as tough and hardcore as any of these guys think they are. Especially when it comes to, like, facing off against a xenomorph.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree with that last part necessarily, because I don't think these characters ever really present themselves as like thinking they're... I mean, Obviously, they probably do think they're tough, but I don't think the movie takes that tactic with them. If anything, they're like, it's like some of them are just scared that she's there to begin with, right? Some of them are sort of like ready to like try something, but a lot of them
sort of have like this community built up around
yeah, the
being restrained from things.
Yeah, and the found god and like one of the, you know, the like the leader of the group, not the warden, but the you know, not Morpheus. He he's like the guy who prays. He's the one who kind of like keeps an eye on the rest of them, all that kind of stuff. But I never get the impression, because I think the dynamic between her and the prisoners is quite interesting at times, because I don't get, like you said, she has to prove herself, kind of like with the Marines in the last movie, and I don't get the same vibe at all with this setup, because these characters, for one, like I don't think she necessarily like wants the respect, because there's, I mean, that's for most of them it's probably unattainable anyway, because of just how they view the world and how they view people. So there's no point in trying. And I think this is a Ripley who is like, I'm just so sick of this shit. Like, why do I keep getting into these situations? Like, this is like whatever. And I think that attitude and the fact that she isn't kind of like trying to, and she doesn't just, she just doesn't give a shit about them, by and large, other than obviously the villain from Last Action Hero, Charles Dance, who is the sort of the medical guy, and he's like being nice to her, and you know, they're kind of like almost romantic connection that never really sits with me when I watch this movie. It feels a little bit just kind of weird, and
I've always liked it. It just, yeah. Well, we'll talk about when we get to spoilers more. But I've actually always liked that part of it.
Yeah. So I do appreciate some of the uniqueness of it. I do. But ultimately, the alien interaction with people, meaning like, you know, the amount of practical alien suit stuff is much less than before, and the interactions with people kind of suffer as a result of that. So the alien parts aren't as good by and large to either of the previous films. The characters are not as likable as the previous two films. The location, whilst I think does a good job of being visually good in that sort of David Fincher way,
who by the way directed this,
who did direct it but disowned it and has never wanted to claim it. He did not do the assembly cut that this was made by others who were involved, because he didn't want to come back and even do it, because he despises his time with it.
Yeah.
But all what was I saying? Yeah, so the visual style is dark, and it's got that David Fincher thing, and it's got like some interesting music, which is very different. Again, I don't know if it's the tone that I wanted from the next Alien movie, but I can't deny that when I'm watching it, that I kind of like the mood that it's giving me at points. But there are times when it feels a bit of a slog, and obviously then you get to the problem which we've sort of ignored intentionally up until now, which is it kind of just shits all over the ending of the last film, and it you know, it starts the movie with doing a very sequely thing that's like pisses you off. And a lot of sequels do this, where in the first couple of minutes, and sometimes you'll get a few scenes with a character from the previous film, but they'll come back just to be killed off in like one scene or whatever, and it's always annoying. You can feel the wires behind the camera working. It's like, no, they didn't want to come back, we have to write them out, so we paid them enough to come in for like 2 days so we could shoot this quick little bit to explain why they're gone. And it's always infuriating because it just feels like a slap in the face as the audience. And I'm not saying I necessarily blame the actor. In this case, I don't think it was the actors necessarily. I think this is the direction, for whatever reason, they wanted to go in. But it's always annoying. So this is, and I think this might be the biggest, most famous example in nerddom and pop culture of like the movie that completely just shits all over the previous one right at the start by just killing off the other survivors of aliens, which sucks.
I do enjoy that every movie in this quadrilogy kind of has a different tone to it.
Sure.
I mean, you know, since we're watching this, you know, looking back on the films, although I don't think I saw this one in the theater, I definitely remember seeing the fourth one in the theater. So at least it has something kind of unique that way. Like we have the consistency of Sigourney Weaver there, but each film there's a progress of her character, and it's done like almost like an anthology in some case, because you just get very different tones and directors for each one.
Yeah, And the sad part is that on paper, David Fincher as the third director sounds really good. Like, you know, like, if you like,
Yeah.
you got Ridley Scott, James Cameron, and David Fincher sounds like the sort of guy that could be the third one. And you can see glimpses of it when you're watching the movie, but obviously between like his like time on set, studio interference, like obviously the theatrical cut is a sort of chopped up mess, so it is a kind of a messy movie in its original form. Like, when you add all that up, obviously it ends up being this thing that's not, I mean, you may like it more than most, but most people aren't as keen on it, and it's a shame because you look at on paper, you see David Fincher as the third director, and you go, you know what, that's a pretty good, and obviously yes, it was David Fincher before we all knew David Fincher, because this was his first movie, but...
And you can tell there's like talent behind the screen.
Oh, for sure.
When you watch it, like some of the scenes that are shot are very Fincher. You can see the building blocks.
Oh, you can see some Seven in this. Like, see, like, just like shots of like water dripping in like dark like corners. Like, that's like a very David Fincher Seven sort of moment, and you can see a lot of that in this. So yeah, visually it is a very nice looking film. But it's obviously like the tone is this sort of like depressing. Like, we're in a prison.
Yeah.
Ripley's in a prison under a constant threat of possible rape, and it only goes more miserable from there. I don't want to spoil anything, but it only gets more miserable from there in a lot of ways. So
yeah,
there's actually a
very
theme.
nihilistic film.
Yeah, there's some themes in this that I can't talk about until we get to spoilers, but I was thinking about them a lot in this viewing and sort of try to give my just sort of sparse my thoughts on them, so I'd have like a different angle to talk about. Before we do go into some other things, I wanted to just sort of bring up a little bit of trivia. And I know I mentioned this like back when I reviewed this with Connor way back. I know I brought this up, but this is just such an interesting factoid, is that the original script, or the original concept for Alien 3, it was written that they were on a wooden planet. Because if you watch the big documentary about it, like on the box set or whatever, they talk about how it was a wooden planet, and there was even like the concept art of like, like the idea being like one of the prisoners could stick their head out of the top of this wooden structure, and they'd basically be like in the upper atmosphere kind of thing. Like, it would be like this, and it sounds like absurd. And obviously they scrapped it because this sounds like, how do you shoot this? This is like, what does this look like? This is insane. So I mean, maybe today with how much CG we've got now, maybe you could do it, but in 1992 I'm not sure what the strategy for this would be.
That concept seems kind of cool. I mean, I don't know why I'm getting Waterworld vibes from it, where they have to be on wood or else they'll die. But yeah, I don't understand what the significance for it. Like, I understand the significance of a planet that's just being mined and oil drilled for resources, like so much so that all the oceans they have are just full of oil. They don't care about like the environmental impact of it. They're just, mining and taking all the that sweet black gold because they've got giant rigs in space and stuff.
Yeah, although the prisoners don't seem to be doing too much with that themselves. They're in a lead works specifically. But yeah, it's a lot of industrial stuff. It's a lot of industrial style art, and it does look kind of cool. Like, and you get a better look at it in this cut, because in the theatrical cut it starts a little bit differently, where they just find Ripley in kind of the crashed ship, whereas in the assembly cut, Charles Dance's character's like out walking on patrol, and he sort of sees her lying there, and she's covered in like dirt and soot and ash and whatever, and so we get this great visual of him running across like back to like the prison outside carrying her, and it is, he's got this trench coat on, so it's kind of like flowing like a cape almost.
Right, yeah.
But everything's really dark and muddy and grey, and like it's just not that type of visual you'd normally imagine when someone's running from the beach, like and like a nice big wide panoramic shot. It's very different. So you really get this oppressive kind of feeling to the place the entire time. Everything about the movie feels oppressive.
Yeah, it's hard to tell how long she's really been there too, because like the crash happened and she looks near death, but she's all washed up on the shore and she's covered in like ocean garbage and insects and stuff like that too. It's hard to get a sense of how long she's been there, because no one seemed to notice the the crash.
Yeah. Which would I mean, it doesn't sound like they spend a lot of time outside, especially because they said like once the sun goes down, it gets too cold, so they can't go out for days, like because the sun stays down for like 3 days or something like that. They said, so you know, I mean, when they say days, I don't know if they mean days on this planet or just like Earth days, and that's how they still measure time.
Possibly, yeah.
I think for the sake of the human sleep cycle, you might still just go by Earth days because you understand, like how you fit into that.
That would be a tough circadian rhythm to get into.
Oh yeah, imagine you have to get used to like, you know, a day that lasts like 3 days, like in Earth time. So you'd be like, oh shit.
You'd have to hibernate for 3 days also.
Do I sleep for like 40 hours and then stay awake for 6 days? Is that how this works now?
You'd be so hungry when you wake up.
Oh god, yeah. So yeah, it's those little details are cool. And obviously this is a place that's actually owned by Weyland-Yutani, so you still have that idea the evil company is still going to have a...
You still see the symbol everywhere. Like all the uniforms and stuff.
Actually, weird little thing, and I noticed this the last time I saw it as well, but like I think I noticed another detail about it this time. Is it's quite late on in the film, it's before their final plan, but like one of the guys is like the second in command to the warden, because he's kind of like a spineless guy who's just always agreeing with the warden. And later on in the film, he's like just casually drinking what's cool. He's hiding it with his hand, like the logo, but he's clearly drinking a glass bottle of Coke. And what stuck out to me this time watching it is that there's a moment where you can see like a sort of like like 12 of them like on the floor, like next to a preacher guy's feet, right, when he's making his speech. And I'm like, this is so weird to have like this product like in this like prison.
I didn't even notice it. Plus, I imagine it's just some sort of product placement they had to get in somehow.
Well, like I said, I think he's hiding the logo with his hand, but if you know, you know. Well, it's clear what it is. I
guess it's true.
Now that I've brought it up, I'm going to go and try and find this moment. I thought I saw like a stack of them on the ground, and I'll see if it's like blank or if you can still make out the logo a little bit.
I did see on the warden's desk he's got one of those bird drinking water things that just was, like one of those executive desk toys. Like, well, I'm glad that thing made it to the future.
Oh, it's the same in because isn't in Aliens? Isn't there a moment where I don't even know what you call them, but it's the row of balls and you swing the ones at the end?
Yeah, the kinetic energy balls.
Yeah, I think maybe it's the start of Alien on the ship, but I'm pretty sure in one of the first 2 Alien movies you see one of them.
Maybe it's just an homage to that, but they're gonna have the bird that drinks water back and forth, which I always associate with The Simpsons. But.
Because we associate these things with the 80s and early 90s, right? These objects, so which makes sense because that's when they were made. But it's just kind of funny that now they feel really old school. But
they'll make it in a couple centuries.
yeah, of course.
They'll come back.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't it be? So. Yeah, I mean, obviously Sigourney Weaver's here, and she's Ripley again. We've kind of talked about her character in this oppressive environment. We mentioned Charles Dance. There's actually a character named Golic who is basically only in the assembly cut. Now, he is technically in the theatrical cut if you really pay attention for him, but all of his lines, all of his moments, and all of his plot are all cut out of the theatrical cut.
Yeah, that would be very confusing then as to what happens next.
Yeah. So, and it's not even just like the big stuff that happens with them in the middle of the movie. Even the first time there's like characters talking about him, and like the preacher guy saying, no, trust God, like he's one of us. You have to like treat him with respect, even though he's a bit kooky. Like even that's not in the theatrical cut because they knew they took the rest of it out. So why would we have the setup for him in there as well? So all of it's gone. It's one of the biggest kind of like separate subplots I've seen. It's not the only one. I've definitely seen other similar sized ones, but it's definitely one of the bigger subplots I can think of in a movie where if you watch the longer cut, you're like, wait a minute, this is, very different. And it's not even just that there's that stuff added in. Like I said, there's alternate things, and there's scenes where there's an alternative scene, and like I said, the chest burster and where the alien comes from is a different animal depending on which cut it is. So there's just straight up different scenes in either one. So that's super, super interesting. But yeah, the actor who plays Golic, I think was a Doctor Who at one point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What's his name here? Paul McGann. I think. Yeah. Oh, I say he's a Doctor Who. Something like that.
I would know.
I mean, clearly, I don't know that well myself, but yeah.
There were a lot of Brits in this prison, though.
Oh, he was in Doctor Who the movie. There you go.
He played a doctor?
I think he was the Doctor in the Doctor Who movie. So full spoilers then for Alien 3. From this point on, you have been warned. There's some different topics to kind of tackle here. I think the first thing I'd want to talk about is, because it was the thing that was on my mind as I was watching it this time, is this one definitely leans into the mother and reproductive kind of side of things a little bit, but obviously it does it in a very different lens. And maybe I'm reaching here, but I definitely got, because obviously Ripley, the big thing in this movie is that halfway through the film she discovers that she has an alien inside her. She was impregnated with a chestburster while she was asleep, and it is a queen that she's got inside of her. So a big part of this movie is that she knows that she's going to die one way or the other at the end of the story, and she wants the others to kill her. She wants to die, and the religious guy refuses to do it for as long as he can. And what I was kind of getting from this, and the company's on the way, we know the rescue ship's coming, and Will and Yutani are like, don't kill the monster, do not harm Ripley, we want them alive, we want to take them in, because that's been their goal the whole time, is to take in the alien, take in the samples, and try and train it or something, because evil company. But
it's always about war and weapons.
But what I couldn't escape watching it this time is the idea that she wants to make sure these aliens don't exist because they're dangerous. She wants to make sure this one inside of her doesn't exist because it's dangerous. And this company saying, no, we want it, and they're going to try and stop her at all costs from doing it. As I really got a lot of like pro-choice and like abortion kind of allegories with this.
Yeah, I see where you're headed here.
Yeah, it really felt like, they deem what she has inside of her as their property, as something that belongs to them. And she, this was obviously not, but like this was not a consensual pregnation. This was something that was, she even says that she was violated, she uses that word. And this is, this is like being pregnant after a rape. And she doesn't, she wants to abort. In this case, it also means killing herself, because that's how the alien works. Yeah. But that's kind of what it means. And I was thinking about it watching it this time, and I was like, yeah, there's some interesting stuff in here about, her death at the end of the movie is kind of like, it's a victim, even though it's a death, like she's basically taking control of her own body and saying, no, I get to do this, I get to win, this is me, this is my choice. And I think that's why we have because there's a difference at the end as well, because in the theatrical cut, as she's jumping into the, she's doing the Terminator 2 into the into the molten
the lava. It's not I think lava, she dives into a furnace.
So yeah, it's a furnace, yeah. But she goes down and she's her arms out, which, by the way, the effect of her going down looks really bad.
It looks bad.
Yeah, it's a really bad composite. But she's going down.
But I like the moment.
into the clouds above the furnace, and she disappears into them. In the theatrical cut, the chestburster happens on the way down, so you get this sort of dramatic last thing. And
I remember that, yeah.
And I understand why you're tempted to do that, because it's like, oh, this confirms that she's done this just in time, so it adds that ticking time bomb thing to her like sacrifice, and she gets to almost look at the thing in the eye and go, yeah, I win. F you, you're about to die. Right? So I
like that it doesn't happen in this version, though.
Yeah. But I'm saying that I understand why they did that in the theatrical cut. But what I think the assembly cut does is that by it never coming out in the first place, it's more of a victory, because it never even gets to be born. Like she got her way, she got to. Yeah,
it doesn't kill her first. Also.
Yeah.
It works well with the theme that you're describing of like, no, she's just she's more of a winner in this case, and she got to make her decision, even though all the men told her not to.
Yeah, even the better, I wouldn't say good men necessarily, but the better men were trying to tell her not to do it.
Yeah. I think I think you might be onto something with this, because the thought definitely crossed my mind watching it, but also I know that Sigourney Weaver had a baby like just a couple years before this too, so it's probably like kind of fresh in her mind also, and she wants to make, because I don't think she wanted to come back for any sequels after the second one. I mean,
I remember,
doesn't she have like a famous like quote saying that she'll only come back if she like has sex with the creature or something else, or if she dies? I was just about
to bring this up. James Cameron said when he was getting her to come back for Aliens, she said, I want to die and have sex with the alien. Because I remember in the commentary he sort of jokes, she got to do that over the next two films. The next two let her do that. So it's a really weird famous quote. And the sex one's really weird, and it's kind of the worst thing about Alien Resurrection. More than that next year. But dying though does make sense. Like her like the ending of this does kind of work. I would still rather Newton Hicks got to survive though, like, even if Ripley has to like make her big sacrifice and like that's her sort of her victory. Like Hicks and Newton can live somewhere else, or even get Bishop's like head and stick it on a stick and like have him be okay.
Well, I am kind of glad that the that Newt didn't have to end up on this prison planet full of rapists.
Oh, sure, yeah. If they're still coming to this planet,
I mean, I like the idea that, she has a different type of survival method on this planet that wouldn't have worked if she had to have this family unit also.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because she's got to go to some dark places, too.
Yeah, obviously, like I say, like this is a movie where she's surrounded by these types of characters. She feels no hope. The company's coming for her. She's got an alien inside of her, and on top of that, she has to just deal with the fact that there's an alien running around again. So this is the third time she's had to put up with this shit. So all of this is just morbid and depressing.
And there's no weapons.
There's no weapons. Yeah, because that's the thing when she asks, like, what weapons do you have, and the warden explains, no, we have nothing. For these reasons, we have nothing. And she's like, well, we're effed then.
It is like a very industrial place, though. You think you would come up with some things, like, I don't know. I mean, like eventually she pulls like a pipe off, and we're like, okay, there's a bat.
Yeah, I do like there's a line where they're talking about flashlights, and it's like, yeah, we got flashlights, but we don't have any batteries. It's like, what about torches? Fire. Humans have had that privilege since the Stone Age. Can we do that? And sure enough, that becomes a big thing. Is that okay? We do actually have flammable like material. Yeah. We can do a lot of fire. Fire is pretty easy. So,
right.
Sure enough, that becomes a big part of the plan. But yeah. So, but it's not a very, like aliens, while constantly being under threat and tense and doing all these other things, like it does have very likable characters you're rooting for and want to survive. And this movie, by its contrast, like there's like almost no characters like I necessarily care about surviving. And I'm not saying I hate the characters. I'm just saying that I don't root for them like I do a Hicks or a Hudson or Vasquez or.
No, I mean even the ones that you do think, okay, well this person seems like they're not all bad, or like maybe there was some sort of redemption for them that was off screen during their time in prison. But even when she's like I can trust you, right? And they're immediately like, no. Don't trust us. We're awful people.
Yeah, and Charles Dance is kind of an interesting character in this because he, like, I don't necessarily buy the romance part too much. It kind of felt just, I don't know. Like, I get that she is kind of in a weird place, and she's also partly kind of like makes her move because he's asking questions about like why she was looking at Newt's body, and she's kind of like, I'll distract him with sex. That's how we'll get around this.
You can't always be having sex though, so.
Yes.
There is a time where he'll be like, so now that we're not doing it, you want to talk about this? Don't think I didn't notice.
Yes. I mean, I accepted the sex because, I mean, of course I'm going to accept it, but I'm going to ask after.
Yeah. I like that they have something of a romance, just because first of all, I want something nice for Ripley, and she does seem to like this guy, and he's like, they both talk about how they've been in space for a long time and they haven't had any kind of like physical contact with somebody, somebody, it's just somebody to make them feel like normal for 20 minutes or however long it takes for them, and so it's nice that she was able to have that.
It's been a long time. I'm going to guess closer to 5.
Well, there's some snuggling,
Charles Dance has not been touched in a long time. I'm not going to make any assumptions here.
He's a gentleman, though. So I think it's a nice moment, I think, for both of them, just because it seems like it's also against the rules, and they both just want to have some kind of physical contact. Also, like, there is a survival aspect for Ripley to have somebody by her side that kind of has some power, maybe not over other people there, but like Charles Dance is a bit more of a respectable person there, even amongst their community. So if she's partnered with him, maybe it's more of a survival thing for Ripley. Like, she can make the 2 weeks until she gets rescued.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't really thinking about it that way, and maybe it's just because I know that, like, it's not going to be 2 weeks, and I know that it's all, like, because halfway through the movie, it's like, oh no, she's going to be dead at the end of this no matter what. So I guess I wasn't thinking about that. And I think that's partly why the Charles Dance thing feels a bit weird to me, because he has kind of a shock death, like, quite early on. It's about a third of the movie in when he dies, and it's right after he opens up and admits that he used to be a prisoner as well. Like, he is a doctor, that's true, that and he is employed there, but he actually did come here as a prisoner first because he got intoxicated and he made some mistakes as a doctor, got some people killed as a result, and that's kind of what he was, paying his debt off for. And he didn't really want to go back to the main world, so he stayed here when everyone else did. Because they mentioned at one point in the lore that this is like it was going to be shut down, but the prisoners wanted to stay, which is why they're not all just kept in cells like a traditional prison. They're accepted as a prison colony.
They have this community that they've built up or set around. It's almost like a cult or something. And plus, they're rejects. They're not going to be able to go back home and then just stay. They'll probably have to still be in prison, just home. At least here, they can make a little community.
Yeah.
And they have their own version of like God, and they still use the cross and stuff, but it is a different type of religion. Like their prayers are strange.
Yeah, so because Charles Dance does die like a third of the movie, it does kind of feel like a weird thing where it almost feels like it's rushing to try and get me to really care and like getting me to react as if it is a shock that he's been killed so early. But I think what it actually does is the opposite, where I kind of feel like, oh no, this was just like a tactic to try and make this matter when it happened so early, as opposed to say, because let's say Hicks did stick around, right, and then he died a third out of the movie, that'd be a bigger like shock, because it's like, oh, he's one of the survivors from the last movie, and he's like, so we've already like sort of attached to him. Whereas with this, it's kind of like, oh, it almost feels like there was more of a story to play out between them that never got to happen because he died so early.
Yeah.
So
I actually do like it though, because I think it's like we don't need to have another Hicks, because they already had that film, and she already has that journey with somebody like she truly has chemistry with over the film. And by the end of it, they have this little family unit. But in this movie, like, this one seems like survival. Maybe it's just, my female brain looking at it. Like, this is a good tactic if there's a lot of men around. It's like, okay, well, this one's mine. So now, like, I'm hands off. So when he's gone, almost instantly after, it's like, oh, well, she doesn't have that protection anymore. Or she's more vulnerable again.
Yeah, I think the contrast she's talked about there is interesting, is that Hicks was like a healthy attraction, which felt like a very genuine place, and in what you say, it became kind of a family unit where you could imagine them in your head going off and like, okay, they're going to actually be a couple, and they're going to adopt Newt, and they're going to be this actual family at some point. Like Hicks was the husband material. Charles Dance here is like, well, everything's screwed up. He's some form of comfort I can take now, but he's not husband material, and he's never going to be, basically. And yeah, there's an interesting contrast between them there, and I do agree that there should have been no attempt to replace the characters that were in the second or first movie. And if nothing else, I'll say this: it doesn't try to recreate anyone really from those movies. It would have been so easy. Like, how many other movies and franchises, like after you do Aliens, would have, oh, this is clearly the Burke, this is clearly the company man, and this doesn't have that. Golic might be the closest in a sense because he's the one that ultimately works against everyone else, but it's a very different type of character and doing it for very different reasons. And that character I do think is very interesting. The idea that there's a character who is, he's crazy, but the idea that he sees the alien, and he wants to worship it because to him it's this god. He calls it a dragon. He's like, he thinks he's impressed by it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's this thing that, instills fear into all the people who, bully him around. So I can see that. Also, just like the weird prayer sections they have earlier in the film of calling out to God and waiting for God to come to them, to return to them. And for him, because he's not all there, to be like, this is what we've been waiting for. This is what we've been praying for. This is our answer. And yeah.
And plus, I love, why I love the practicality of a team of characters coming up with a plan and executing that plan when based on the rules that are presented to them. And it's like, okay, we don't have weapons, but we do have fire. We have this room. It's like a toxic dump, kind of with big blast doors, and there's only one entrance, and that's where they're going to lock him in. Now, I'm assuming that they used all their supplies to do all the fire stuff, and that's why they couldn't just do it again. Because it did occur to me, can't you just lure him back in there? Because maybe it'd be smart enough to not go in because you've already tricked them once. Because we know they're quite smart, the aliens. But why aren't you trying to do that again? But they used a lot of, because they had to paint a lot of hallways and stuff with this flammable oil or whatever. So maybe they just ran out of their shit to do that with. But I do love that they win. They trap the alien, and in the assembly cut, this is not in the theatrical. All of this is not in the theatrical cut. Some of the fire stuff is, and that's some of the stuff that just feels like, why is this happening in the theatrical cut? It's just kind of what it's on.
I guess because they put so much money into it to making the big fireball.
I think it's also because they needed something in an action scene in the middle. So it was we'll chop it up and use parts of it just so there's a little bit of something.
Yeah, I guess maybe you could think, well, they're working on heavy metals and stuff. There's probably a lot of flammable stuff around.
Yeah.
Maybe these pipes that they're in now used to have oil in them running through them or something. Because in the cut, you still get the guy who gets killed by the xenomorph, and his little igniter thing falls. And they're not ready for it yet, so the big fire happens too soon.
But there's no reason for why all the floors are flammable, and it cuts out. I'm sure it cuts out the guy saying we're not ready yet, because in the theatrical cut you don't know there was a plan because they're not doing anything like that. So yeah, it's actually really funny if you look up because I was double checking some of the differences before we recorded. And there's a website, moviecensorship.com, and if you go to Alien 3, it literally gives you every difference. It gives you the timestamps and says here. And what's interesting is this part here, particularly when they're setting up things up, that's really hit and miss, where there's 10 seconds here, 10 seconds there, doing all the setup. But there was a lot of bits in between that were still in the theatrical cut, just kind of chopped up. But see, wants to capture the alien, and from the scene where they actually lock the door and the alien's been lured in there, from there until Golic lets it out and they realize it's let out, that's a 7-minute chunk in its entirety that's not in the theatrical cut, which is a really big continuous chunk in one swoop to just be missing. But I love that you just have this guy who worships the alien, who lets him out. And then goes in, and it's not like he's expecting the alien to thank him. I think when he walks in, he's bracing. He knows he's
a noble sacrifice for him. Yeah.
He knows he's going to die. He's like, yes, my God, you may take me. I give myself to you, kind of thing.
Yeah, I like his apology because he instantly murders the guy who's on watch, and it's a good gore like throat cutting scene also.
Yeah,
And he's
yeah.
like, I'm sorry, but like this is for the greater good.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So, like earlier on, when Charles Dance dies, they're in the medical bay, and at this point, Golic is already because when a couple of the guys get killed, they don't know if it's a monster or if it was Golic who just murdered them. So they've got him tied to the bed in the sick bay.
They couldn't let him wash his face first.
I know he's covered in blood. Because actually, that's the thing. Like when he's like in awe of the aliens like picked a guy up off the floor, and he sort of snaps the head back, and it sort of flicks blood onto Golic's face. It's a really nice little moment. It's probably in terms of the alien being on screen, it's one of the best moments probably in the movie with the alien on the screen. But yeah, so he's in sick bay. So just to talk about the differences again, the scene where Charles Dance gets killed. Very suddenly, he gets picked up in the shower curtain, and then you get the famous moment where the alien comes up to Ripley but doesn't kill her, and obviously that's the sort of the suspicion. It's like, oh, she's got one inside of her, and that's why he's not killing her. But during this whole scene in the assembly cut, every so often it cuts back to Golic like muttering like religious things or talking about the dragon. It's it's every so often it cuts back to him, and all of those are not in the theatrical cut. So again, if you look at the list of all the differences on this website, it's all these little 3-second chunks, just like
I was going to glance at the trivia before we started recording, but this is probably the most trivia I've ever seen on any film on IMDb.
yeah, it's dense. Super
Like,
dense.
I think I got through like the first maybe 40 things, and then I'm like, oh wow, I've barely scratched the surface.
Yeah,
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I'm still meaning to watch the full uncut making of, because when they released the quadrilogy DVD box set, all 4 movies got like big 3-hour multi-chapter, really in-depth, like some of the best making of stuff for movies I've ever seen. Like the first 2 movies, like they're documentaries I've watched a few times because they're just so good. Like they're fascinating to watch. Like hearing what Alien was like before it got spruced up by other script writers, when it was like all the weird sci-fi names and things like that. Really fascinating. But Alien 3, because Fox at the time were like, oh, we don't like all this negativity about like them talking about how we were treating David Fincher, they made them kind of chop up a little bit. But they later, maybe because it was new management or whatever, I don't know. But when the Blu-rays were coming out, they restored it, and it's uncut. So it's like maybe like 30 to 40 minutes longer in total. This big, and it was already like a good 2.5 hours. So it's like over 3 hours of making of, and it's the full original version. I've never went back and watched that full version of the Alien 3 documentary, so I should at some point, because I'm sure it's good.
I bet it's fascinating. Like I think it's Fincher's first film.
It is, yeah.
So even for his, what he had to go through, and listening to what other people think of this director who they didn't like, but ended up becoming one of the, most famous working directors today.
And he made films with Fox later. Like he did Fight Club with Fox, less than a decade later. So
yeah,
it's not like he was gone from Fox forever, but it's fascinating. But so
man, I wish I could see that director's cut though. Just like I wish he could have made the movie he wanted to make. Because even that, I did see in the trivia that scene where the alien comes up to Ripley. It's probably the most iconic shot of the film. Was something he had to sneak. He and Sigourney Weaver had to be sneaky and to film it, because producers wouldn't let him do it for some reason.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, is that even the assembly cut is not a director's cut, and not just because he didn't come back to supervise the edit or anything like that. Like, even the assembly cut is much better than the theatrical cut, but it's still like he was having trouble on set. He, like you say, he's been told he's not allowed to shoot certain things. So it is kind of fascinating to wonder just how much more different would it be again if it was his true vision from the get-go.
Right. At least before he dies, I want him to make a commentary for it, at least.
Oh, I don't think he will. I don't think he wants to talk about it. Like,
come on, Fincher. We all want to see it.
If I think he might have wanted to Alan Smithy this, but he ultimately wasn't allowed to. But he tried to.
You can't have a big production like this with Alan Smithy's name.
Yeah, well, that stopped happening because people sort of learned what it was. Because Alan Smithy, for those of you who don't know, there was a time when if a director wanted to disown a film, they would basically say, I don't want my name on it, so they would credit Alan Smithy as the director, as a made-up person. It's like, it basically means the director is not proud of this, and not necessarily because they were bad. Maybe they blame the studio for interference. And that's open for debate.
I guess that would mean they wouldn't make any profit off of it, also, though, right?
Well, I don't know.
They probably got paid for the work they did, but any additional profits from the film wouldn't go to the director if they weren't actually credited anymore.
Well, yeah, but you say that as if directors always have back-end deals where they get a percentage. That's actually only some of the time. I suspect more often than not. I mean, maybe it's more common now, but I mean, certainly bigger directors who will basically be able to sell movies on their name. Like, I'm sure, like, Nolan seems like a guy, for example, who probably gets a back-end percentage, but what I'm saying is I don't think David Fincher was getting a back end for his first movie in 1992. Maybe he does now, but
okay. I mean, I just assume that that did happen to people who are, major parts of anybody. If the movie wins Best Picture, anybody who goes on stage to collect the Best Picture Oscar or to thank everybody, it would be getting some sort of back end.
Not always. I think you'd be surprised.
Okay.
How often that's not the case, but obviously there's some actors get back end deals. Some of the big stars are able to negotiate that, and they won't even sign on for a movie unless they get a back end deal. And that's whatever.
Heard all about it during the pandemic, so
yeah. Of course, yeah. Scarlett Johansson's like back end deal for Black Widow got messy and. Because they didn't release it in theaters. Well, they did, but...
They did.
Yeah, no, but it was like...
nobody went. Yeah. They also released it on Disney Plus the same day.
Yeah, well, that was the big thing, yeah. Like, people had the option of just watching at home, therefore she made a lot less money than she would have done. But hey, so yeah, obviously one of the other things we talked about, I mentioned earlier on, was the different animals. So in the theatrical cut, it's a dog. The alien comes from a dog. Which really means that it should be smaller, so it makes more sense in the assembly cut that it's bigger than it usually is because it came from an ox. So you get a completely different scene where these guys are like bringing in this ox that died. Obviously it died because of a facehugger, because they question why, and we get all this dialogue with them talking about the fact that there's a woman there now, and like charming fellow. What was the line he has? Treat a whore like a queen and treat a queen like a whore. Never fails. Mm-hmm. You can't go wrong if you do that. But they're just having this banter as like they're dealing with this dead ox, and of course we get a very different chestburster scene. You do see the dog at one point in this cut that was the dog in the theatrical cut after it's dead, but it's just like it's been killed rather than it's been chestburster, because I think in the theatrical cut you do see it alive. You see like the living dog first. But because it's up in the big ventilation like fan.
Yeah, I don't really remember too much of it, but I guess this is the first time that we see that the xenomorph takes different forms depending on what its host is.
It's good we ran into this because we'll be doing AVPR soon, and that's very relevant for that.
That's right. And also for the prequels.
Yeah.
We're all looking forward to.
No, I'm looking forward.
People will die on that hill for Prometheus, though.
No, I'm looking forward to Alien vs Predator Requiem because it's actually even worse than. Certainly, it's definitely worse than Prometheus, but. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just such a turd that I can just kind of whatever. But like Prometheus and Alien Covenant, it's like I actually had hope. I
didn't see anything past Prometheus, and I was like, this is. It's got all the ingredients. It should work, and it's just.
You have such a treat ahead of you in a couple of years.
Well, we've got time.
Oh dear! Unless they come out with a new Alien movie, in which case we're going to have to like finish them before the new one comes out. Like that will change our plan. If there's going to be a new one, we'll have to just get through the rest of them before the new one comes out. But
I mean, I don't hate the idea of Kenny Powers versus an alien xenomorph. I can't imagine how he fits into that universe.
Yeah. So Yeah, you get all the stuff. I mean, I think, because we kind of bounced around different things. At the start of the movie, there's a lot of stuff with Ripley like wanting to really know how Newt died and making sure it wasn't an alien, making sure it wasn't a chest burster.
Yeah, we get a pretty gruesome autopsy scene for a character that we love.
Yeah, and some of this is not in the theatrical cut. I can't remember how much of it is left out, but some of it is unique to this cut. But she, what needs to do an autopsy, and it is gruesome. You hear crunching, and because he takes this blade out and then he sort of cracks open the chest for her, and just make sure. And
she's not coming back, fans. She's really gone.
Oh yeah, she's definitely gone. But she has to really make sure, and then we get like the funeral scene where they throw the bodies of Newt and Hicks into the furnace, and which obviously is important because it sets up the ending. But I guess it's also kind of nice that she goes to rest in the same place as Newt and Hicks. It's like she's getting buried with them at the end. We get into the same furnace.
She has one more mission before she can join them.
Yeah, it's that kind of sad thing though. Where you're like, can Ripley have a happy end? I mean, and don't worry, we said it as kind of a victory at the end because it's her own choice, and that's great. But at the same time, she's had such a miserable time the last 3 movies. Give her a win.
Yeah, can't catch a break.
Yeah, I love all the stuff with like Weyland-Yutani like coming, like this ship coming, and Ripley questioning like once she knows it's an alien, like, are they coming to kill it? Probably not. And she questions this, and she gets the because the warden dies, like he's one of the first ones to die once they know there's an alien about. So it's the spineless guy, the second in command, who's kind of talking to Ripley a lot. And he's like, yeah, this is a computer to talk back to the company, and he's like asking questions. And sure enough, they deny permission to kill the alien. Like, and obviously they're bluffing because they know they don't have any way to kill it. But
yeah,
they're like,
they
no.
just want permission to terminate.
And they say permission denied, and it's like, oh no. And then later on, it's like, no, make sure Ripley's okay. And they show up, and like, I like that it's a ship that looks like Sulaco. It's a same type of ship, different name obviously, but same make and model, if you will. And they come in, and you got all these guys in hazmat suits, and you've got clearly Lance Henriksen with the scarf and the glasses.
They try to hide him, but we recognize that forehead.
Yeah. And he comes in, and because we had a little debate about this when we watched Alien vs Predator.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And he claims he's not an android. Ripley assumes that he is. And he's like, no, I'm the real person. I designed him. So this is a bit of an Ian Soong thing to reference Star Trek. And it's actually because it's the spineless second in command dude who is like helping them all out, but then when it seems like it's turning kind of sour, where they're not really going to give Ripley a choice, he actually does hit Lance Henriksen as if like, oh no, I'm going to help her now.
He hits him with like a pipe wrench or something.
Yeah, which is how you see him bleed, and he's like, oh no, it's red blood.
His ears like hanging off. Also, it's pretty gruesome.
He's like, see, I'm a man. Think of all the things we could do with that alien. And she's like going out in this little platform. The one prisoner who's left alive, because they're all dead at this point, like every single one of them has died gradually one by one. The one who's left, who's not the one you suspect, because he's kind of like the third or fourth prisoner.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like a final girl.
No, but he actually survives. Like, he's the only one who survives, because he gets shot in the leg, but after Ripley dies, you see a shot of him being escorted out in handcuffs, and he sort of turns around and he's like, like,
I'm glad somebody was there who knows the truth about everything that happened. So somebody was there to pass along the warning. So if they ever make another Alien movie, I'm sure he's going to be back. He's the new Ripley.
Oh sure, yeah, that's the Alien
for
Resurrection.
His expertise.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's willing to help Ripley at the end, but he still doesn't strike me as someone who's going to be able to carry the cause on his own.
Right. Yeah.
Not getting that vibe. But so what did you think of seeing a human? I mean, they never actually call him Charles Weyland in this. I think I made that assumption because they call him that in AVP. And in the credits, he's credited as simply Bishop 2, which is,
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the credits, so I didn't notice that. Yeah. I think it's you want to get Lance Henriksen back since he's a name and a face people love from the first movie, and we sort of get him earlier in the film, but it's a robot version of him. And I think it is just an animatronic face, so you just really hear his voice. This is the first time you see
Oh
him.
yeah, because Bishop's like really messed up.
Yeah. He's only got like half a head. So yeah, it was great to see him there. I think it's a neat idea that he would have. I mean, we've seen multiple models because Ash was, I assume, not modeled after anybody important. So it's a bit strange that they pulled a Noonien Soon on this one, but at the same time, it's a face that we associate with the company, so it's big on Ripley's character, who distrusts the androids from the first film, to having this trust for Bishop, to having to distrust him again.
I also think it's interesting that the real Bishop, and by that I mean the android from Aliens, also wants suicide in this. Like he asked Ripley to turn them off, because if he can never be back to being fully functional, he doesn't want to exist. So he's like, turn me off. And she's like, you sure? And he's like, yeah. So I think it's interesting that both, I don't know if you could call Bishop a survivor from Aliens necessarily in the context of this movie, because he is just this like hunk of junk that's turned on for like a minute. But it's interesting that both him and Ripley kind of like meet the end of their story by choosing to end their life and having control over like their own fate. I think that's interesting, especially since even all the prisoners in this prison, so much of their thing is about controlling where they are and what they're tempted by, and they want to live out the rest of their lives here because it's where they're choosing to be. So there's a lot of like the idea of free will and choice. And
I mean, they all kind of accept that they're going to die, and it's just their mission now is just to make sure that nobody else dies outside by this alien surviving.
Yeah. Not that they're doing it for noble reasons per se, because at one point Ripley even asks the religious dude to, like, we have to kill this thing because like they're not going to kill it, they're going to try and take it, and it's going to hurt a lot of people. And he's like, hey, that's their world, I don't care, like this is our world here, as long as we're okay, like it's fine. So, and when he does get railed up and he does make his big speeches later on in the films, and we're going to kill this thing, it almost comes across more as we're not letting them have it, but we also want revenge because it's killed like half of our brothers at this point, so we're going to take it out.
Although she does ask him at one point also to kill her, and like is ready for death, and he refuses to do it. So I mean, as much as he doesn't want to have this noble side of him, we know it's there.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
To see it.
The first time she speaks to him, because he speaks a little bit at the funeral for Newton Hicks, and she goes up to speak to him, even though, because all we hear from the warden is that Ripley can't intermingle. She has to be kept in the infirmary at all times. She can't walk around. It's too dangerous. And then she walks out of the cafeteria, and everyone's just like, huh? But she goes up to religious dude, and he basically immediately says, you don't want to know me. He says he's a murderer and a rapist, and makes it very clear. And this is one of the moments where Ripley, kind of showing that she's not fazed by it, is like, well, I guess I make you nervous then. She sits down. Like, she's like, because I wonder, like, what is Ripley's reaction? Ripley, an alien, before she's encountered the alien, like, what is her reaction to this? Not that she was like a girly girl, like, she was a trucker in space who was like, she always had a different vibe to her. But I have to imagine the events of the previous two films have hardened her somewhat to like, you're just a human, like I can take you on. I
know what this means.
But what I think is interesting about that, to me though, that scene, is that, well, he's done some bad things to get here, and maybe those things he said he is what he did. That moment to me reads more like he's just trying to scare her away from him because he's scared of having her like influence on him. And rather than because as the film progresses, he saves her later on when there's a group of guys who are going to attack her. The main one of which is an actor who you might know from later things when he's a bit more round. He was in Mindhunter. He's been in a bunch of different things. But also, because so right before religious dude comes in and saves her, right? Because she's about to get gang raped. The one who's about to like sort of like go first, as it were. He puts on goggles. Like, this struck me as a really weird moment where he's like, I'm putting on my goggles. That means it's go time. I'm like, what? I don't know.
Maybe he doesn't know what to expect. He doesn't want to get anything in his eye.
All right. It was a weird little character touch that he put on his Mad Max looking goggles.
Yeah, that's exactly what they look like.
Yeah. So, yeah. But like I say, I think this throughout the film, he very much does show himself to have like more morals, like a moral center, and clearly, he says it the first time he sees her, I'm a murderer of women, and then later on when she says, kill me, I'm asking you to because I have to die, he's like, no, you don't get to die until it dies, first. And then when they're climbing out of the thing, because the big plan at the end is to lure the alien into where they pour the hot molten lead, and he stays back and sacrifices himself and like makes her leave, even though she's been saying for like 20 minutes, I'm going to sacrifice myself.
To die anyway. Yeah.
But he has to do this big noble sacrifice thing, and maybe part of that is like in his own mind, this is his redemption. Like this is maybe in a way Golic was right. This is like their god coming to like get them back, but it's not so much that he has to worship it; it's that he has to like give himself to like stop it, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's a vengeful god.
Martyr.
Yeah.
This is his martyrdom. Well, also he knows that the alien won't chase her because she's got the queen inside her, so he knows that this is like he has to sacrifice himself in order to.
No, that's true. He does technically have to be the bait because it's established at this point.
But he still makes her leave.
Yeah.
So like if he was there with her still, then the alien would have stayed there. So he still makes a point of saying, no, you got to get out of here.
Yeah, for sure, because it's established at this point that Ripley, because she has an alien inside of her, there's a scene where she even goes to find the alien, and she finds the alien and just kind of stands with it, and then it cuts to like her talking to the guy afterwards, and she's like, yeah, I went and saw him. He stood right up next to me and didn't attack me. He just ran away. Like I'm not under any threat from the monster. And I kind of wish this was used more, like, because mechanically this is really interesting. The idea that someone's immune from being attacked by the alien, like, surely you could use that a little bit more as part of a plan.
Don't they use it in the fourth film? I guess we'll find out.
We'll find. Yeah, I don't remember, but maybe they do. I can't remember. But like that is interesting. I mean, well, actually, it's not so much that there's an alien inside her, but it's because Ripley's part alien, I think, is what you're thinking of in the fourth one, where there's some mechanics where she doesn't get.
Yeah, but she's definitely, she's definitely stronger and more capable of things, and she's she's already like part of their family or whatever.
Yeah,
so.
but that's weirder because it's like a sort of weird hybrid thing. This idea that a regular person, admittedly, the price of it is that you're a ticking time bomb because you're going to die soon, but the idea that they have one person the alien will not go after, so you can sort of use them as a shield or something. Like, use that. Like, think of how to use that in a plan and like really use it. And I wouldn't really say they do, but by and large, like, okay, you can flip the switch because
there are moments where you see it, yeah, but it's not like a big plot device.
Well, yeah, there's moments where you see it, but what I'm saying is use it in the plan. Have the characters use it as part of like as a tool, because that's what they've got. They don't have weapons, but they have someone the alien won't attack. That is a mechanical device that they can use. Both the characters in the story, but also the writer as a plot device, and it doesn't really use it in either way.
Really, what they do is that they protect themselves by attacking Ripley or pretending that Ripley is under stress and danger from them, so that the xenomorph still follows them to the point where like it's like a standoff, like she's taken hostage by them, although the xenomorph doesn't really know, that they're being tricked. So they do use it, but not in the way that you're describing.
Yeah, and I don't think like that entire scene though, where they're all running around the tunnels at this point you're talking about, like so much of it is like the tunnels kind of look the same. Like I said, the characters are not well lit and they're all bald, wearing the exact same clothes, so they look the same.
Yeah, I did think that Pete Postlewaite died like 4 times. Was that him?
Yeah, so like there's because I think for this like sort of thing to play out, not only do we have to understand the goals, but I think you have to some extent understand the geography and understand. But whereas it kind of felt like there was lots of like tunnels leading to the same area, and like it was hard to kind of get your head around it a little bit. And I've seen the movie a number of times now, and even now on this like fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever viewing I'm on at this point, I still like didn't really follow exactly the sequence of events other than just the general gist of it to get to okay, they're just chasing them into the mold. They can only pour the lead. But I do like the alien's death though, because the alien is in there, it gets poured with the hot lead, and it jumps out, so they think it's dead, and it jumps out of the hot lead, so it's coated in the liquid lead, and then they turn on the water to cool down the lead, so it kind of solidifies while it's on the alien, and then that makes the alien explode.
Yeah. They did another Terminator 2 death. Well, I know he goes into the lava, but there's also the Terminator 2 scene where they, use the liquid nitrogen, and then he shatters into a bunch of pieces.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, but that wasn't the death, though, which is why you confused me there.
Well, yeah. Sure.
So the reason why I don't think this is that similar to that is because this just explodes into a splat, whereas the T-1000 did explode into pieces. Like there was like actual pieces of them, which then obviously reformed.
You don't think it was somewhat inspirational for this film? I don't know. I was getting like that, and then there was also the molten lava scene. I mean, it's a furnace, but it looks like she's falling into lava.
Yeah, but that's her that's falling into it. No, not the alien. The alien never goes into it.
Right. Yeah.
The alien gets doused.
But it's the hero that does it. Yeah.
Yeah. But the alien gets doused with the hot lead. But the actual moment, probably the only one of the other good moments I like actually visually with the alien is the shot of the lead solidifying on it, so it looks like it's got like a coating of like metal, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty neat. Why it makes it explode, I don't know if my science is quite there to know if that's complete bullshit or not, but it felt a little bullshit.
I think it's still, because they also showed like a bucket had the same effect happening when it got hot and then cold real fast.
Okay.
Is that it? So they sort of set it up.
No, that's fair. That's fair. If they had a little established like moment of that, whether it's true or not. Although I suspect it might be. This sounds like something that's maybe just basic chemistry, to be honest. But I thought that was a cool visual moment. And the explosion itself's whatever.
Totally.
The explosion is whatever. It's just an explosion. But it's the solidifying part where it feels like the alien's struggling to move.
We're gonna have a lead statue of a xenomorph for a moment.
I kind of wish it just did. I wish it just solidified in place and it was like, here it is.
That would be cool, but then Weyland-Yutani would have a sample.
That's true, yeah, they could walk out with it. And the question is would the alien die, or once they like chip off the lead, would it be alive again?
I don't know. I bet it'd be really heavy to move though.
Because we've seen xenomorphs like seem to be okay in space. Now, whether or not it's just a case of they can survive in space for like 5 minutes holding their breath.
They're like giant insects, right? So
yeah. I was trying to think if there's anything else I glossed over in the movie that is worth going back and mentioning. I think we covered all the big things that go down.
A man gets the first death in the movie is a man getting killed into a million pieces by a giant fan. It's kind of cool. Lots of gore.
Yeah. A couple of deaths are okay. Charles Dance's death, there is actually a close up shot of the penetration of his head with the alien
into
mouth.
The skull.
Yeah, so they made a prosthetic head that they could, poke with this thing, and it looks good. At least in the quick shot you see of it.
Even in the rape scene where the priest guy comes in and starts beating people, like I think we see a little bit of brains at the end of the tool that he used to beat somebody.
Oh, actually, speaking of gnarliness, so this isn't in the theatrical cut, I don't think, because like I said, the openings are very different, how they find Ripley and the ship and all that. But when you see some shots of the prisoners who go and find the ship and they look inside in this cut, like you see like part of like a jaw sticking out of just like mush and stuff.
Like, it's not in the right place.
Yeah, so it's like, what, does that maybe Hicks?
Right, yeah. Or it's not Newt because we see her later, but it's got to be Hicks, right? It's either Hicks or it's Bishop, but we see his jaw later too.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's Hicks.
it must be. But at the same time, though, when they're putting Hicks' body in the furnace, it still looks pretty human-shaped, and what this looked like in the ship did not look human-shaped anymore.
Yeah.
Like, did Charles Dance put a lot of effort reassembling it into a vague shape?
They probably just got someone else from the morgue and they just wrapped him up instead.
It's a symbolic burial. Yeah, there's a great story, actually, a little tidbit of trivia about Michael Biehn getting a nice payday because someone noticed on set that they'd made like a sort of, I don't know if it's like the image on the screen in the computer or if it was like a prosthetic of like his dead body, but someone like told him, hey, they've got like your likeness in this movie, and they can't do that without paying you. Like, that's not allowed. Like, they can use footage of the last movie if they want to like do a flashback, because that's their footage, they're allowed to do that, but they can't do that. So they contacted him and was like, hey,
You want some money?
pay me. And he got paid. So Michael Biehn, if nothing else, Michael Biehn got a payday out of this movie, despite the
Well,
fact.
good, because he didn't really have a whole lot of work after. Or at least he wasn't the star we all thought he would be.
No. The 90s onwards were not as Michael Biehn filled as I would have liked, but
Me too.
that's what it is. But hey, he's got that glorious period where he did Terminator, Aliens in the Abyss, and you know, he's in The Rock, which was mid-90s, but he's like a fairly minor character in it, sadly.
It's been so long since I've watched that, but it is technically sci-fi, so we should do it.
How is it technically sci-fi?
The virus.
The
Remember those
MacGuffin.
green balls?
Sure, but like that's a bit of a stretch.
Oh, come on. It's science fiction. Welcome to The Rock.
I always get annoyed. There's a point in that movie where someone calls Sean Connery like an English prick or something like that, and it always annoys me that he doesn't correct them. And I'm like, wait, is he meant to be English? Is he actually meant to be English in this?
We know he only has one accent he can do.
It bugs me. As a Scottish person, it bugs me that him not corrected and saying, I'm Scottish, you bastard. We saying, shut up. But thus, that was the tale of Alien Thrice. Or Alien Cubed, as the way it's written.
You know, it's just the little...
On the poster, yeah. Not sure why they made that particular choice, but there it is. Also, we should mention the other famous bit of trivia about this is that the first teaser trailer for Alien 3 implied very heavily that it was going to be set on Earth.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was just a teaser trailer with
I've
like...
never seen it.
It was like voiceover, and it was like space, and then it revealed Earth, and it was basically... I don't know if I'm making this part up, but I think it might have said on Earth everyone will hear you scream. Which is a great like callback to the first movie's tagline, which is obviously in space no one can hear you scream.
Yeah, I imagine if Cameron was making the film, he would have done that. Like, what do you do next? You bring the aliens to Earth.
Yeah, I don't know if Cameron was ever involved or even.
I think Ridley Scott was approached to do the third movie, but obviously he said no.
Yeah. The one I know about is that right before AVP, because AVP was chosen instead, was there was going to be a fifth Alien movie written by Cameron and directed by Scott, which I'm still pissed that didn't happen, because that would have been the perfect concoction. You have James Cameron writing a good script, and then Ridley Scott, who sometimes will make a bad movie because he has a bad script, but if you give him a good script, he'll go and
He's aces.
He'll go and like give some nice visuals to it, and it'll all work. But unfortunately, if you give him a bad script, he'll go and he'll still make it pretty, but that's
Yeah,
it.
but it'll be like Exodus.
Or it'll be Prometheus. More than that in 2 years' time. So, yeah, Alien 3, final thoughts and rating. Take it away.
Yeah, I've never hated the film, so I still like it. I don't think it's like, you know, it doesn't reach the heights, obviously, of the first two. I love that first movie even more than the second one, and I like that this one is kind of really dark, and I like the nihilism in it, and I actually like the themes that you brought up, but with the whole pro-choice thing. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if it's playing more off the first movie than the second film. And it's still a good watch, I think. So I'll give it a 6.5.
Yeah, it's because I don't hate it. I think there's a lot of things to appreciate about it as a film. There's a lot of things to appreciate about it, especially in the assembly cut. The theatrical cut is a mess, where there's chunks missing and some things just don't make sense. But the assembly cut makes it into a more coherent film, which I do think looks very pretty. And like, you know, we've talked about some of the themes, we've talked about some of the things that work in it. We do have, unfortunately, some really bad CG alien shots sprinkled throughout, which do kind of, you know, cheapen it in a say, because it does look so slick otherwise. So when these shots happen, it really sticks out. Or when she's going to the fire at the end, it just looks really fake and kind of goofy. But that's like a minor problem in the grand scheme of things, in the sense that fundamentally, even if this was the movie, the exact movie that Fincher wanted to make, conceptually, because it wants to just erase the last film and go back to like this, like Ripley on her own, fundamentally that's just a choice that's going to be jarring to a lot of people. It was jarring to me, and it still is to me. Like I still don't like that it starts that way, and I still don't like that. Like I would have preferred to do this story with a different character, even though, don't get me wrong, there are obviously some layers you get to Ripley because it's Ripley and because she's been through what she's already been through. Like, you would be missing something without that. But I don't think, well, people might be disappointed it's not quite as much of a thrill ride as Aliens was. I think if you just did a new character in a new situation because you wanted to like go back to a more pared down, minimalist, like slow burn movie, I don't think it would have pissed people off like it did, because it, you know, killed off these characters. It gave Ripley this horrible, bad, nasty, depressing ending to her story. So because of that, like fundamentally, there is still, even if it was the exact thing Fincher wanted to make, there would still be something that I would objectively say I don't like about the premise. But I do think there's a lot of good direction in here. I do think there's some good moments, and I do appreciate a lot of things about it, which is why I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. The assembly cut gets a 6 out of 10. The theatrical cut's more like a 4.5. But yeah, so it's not a train wreck, and it, you know, I think this still feels way more like a movie and has the cinematic qualities of a movie more than, say, like, you know, the last Predator movie we got or something. You know, a lot of these modern movies all just kind of look like TV shows now and feel the same. This does have a very distinct feel and style and mood.
Yeah,
and I appreciate that a lot.
A lot of style.
So 6 for me. It's not a terrible movie in its assembly cut form. It's just, it's not necessarily what you wanted after Aliens either. So you kind of have to, you know, separate it in your head and approach it on its own terms, and maybe you'll like it, maybe, but it's definitely a big step down because of all the things we talked about from the first two.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't really remember it as well, but I do think I like the theatrical cut too, so I still recommend like watching the film if that's the only version you can get.
Go find the assembly cut. I would not recommend the theatrical cut. But yeah, okay, so there you go. That's Alien 3. So 6 out of 6.5, not bad. But given that I gave both of the last two a 10, it's a pretty big,
yeah, as did I,
you know, fall. So it is a big dramatic drop off, even though it isn't like, you know, complete trash by any means. So we'll see how we feel about Alien Resurrection next year. But anyway, let us know what you think of the movie, of course, in the comments. Like, subscribe, ding the bell, all that stuff. Helps us out a lot. You can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV to support us, can't you, Tara?
That's right. If you enjoy our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, as you already said, where if you donate as little as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus Ace movie reviews. And they are all aces, because we review the B movies over there. So if you're looking for your favorites, like Trancers or any sequels that didn't quite make the cut for the main channel, like Philadelphia Experiment 2 or the Tremor sequels, go over there and check them out. And if you donate $5 per month, you'll get access to these reviews one day early, and you get some other stuff like a week early. So lots of bonuses. Thank you.
Tara sounded so annoyed there, like what she already said. Sorry. I'm sorry I took part of your script.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll tell you what's coming next time, but honestly, we've recorded these in a weird order, and I don't know what order they're going to in, so I'm not even going to try and guess what's next. But I do know that it'll be more 90s Alien season, because there's still at least 2 of those left. So look forward to more 90s Alien movies. Hopefully you enjoyed Fire in the Sky last time, and you enjoyed Alien 3 this time, and you'll see some more soon. So thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Did I thank the Patreon producers? I don't think I did. So yes, thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Boardnow, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Treisman, and Alison M. Fordyce. There you go, that's that done. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys next time. Keep watching science fiction and computer at Salsa.